speak up about discrimination and watch retaliation follow. That's exactly what happened to employees at Louisiana State University, and their fight for justice still isn't over. This case really shows how retaliation claims can outlast every other claim an employee brings forward. By the end of this video, you'll not only understand what happened in this case, you'll also know how retaliation really works, why it often outlasts other claims that are brought by employees, and what you can do to protect yourself if you ever find yourself in a similar situation. Hi, I'm Harlow Reed, employment lawyer, HR consultant, and creator of the HR Insider, and on this channel, I do more than share legal opinions. I break down real cases to show how the law might apply to your workplace, whether you're an employee trying to protect your rights or an employer trying to do things the right way. One of the things I really try to highlight on this channel is that no employee is immune from retaliation, not one. I think a lot of people assume that certain professions, certain jobs are somehow protected. College professors, executives, doctors, lawyers, people may assume that employees in those positions are somehow protected from retaliation. But the truth is, it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter your education, your experience, your knowledge, your age, or even your tenure at the company you're with. Discrimination and retaliation can happen to anyone. And that's why today's case really stood out to me. Because here we're talking about attorneys, people who know their rights, and they still found themselves caught in a situation where their employer, an institution that clearly knew that they understood the law, allegedly retaliated against them. And so here's my point. If this can happen to attorneys who know how to defend themselves, it can happen to you, it can happen to me, it can happen to anyone. All right, let's get into it. The content shared on this channel is for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional legal advice. Always consult with a qualified attorney or HR professional for specific guidance tailored to your needs. And hey, don't forget to like and subscribe. Katherine Muslow and Meredith Cunningham both worked at Louisiana State University Health Sciences Center in New Orleans. That's LSU HSC. Katherine had been there a long time, serving as general counsel from 2002 all the way to 2019, and Meredith joined as a part-time staff attorney in 2014, staying until 2019 as well. LSU HSC isn't just a small department. It includes Louisiana State University's School of Medicine, School of Dentistry, and Public Health. And it's overseen by the Board of Supervisors for Louisiana State University and Agricultural and Mechanical College, or just LSU. Here's where the dispute started. In mid-2019, both Katherine Muslow and Meredith Cunningham's positions were retired as part of LSU's decision to consolidate its legal team. That's what set off this employment dispute. Now, LSU didn't come up with the consolidation overnight. Formal process actually began with a policy update on December 10th, 2018, when LSU revised something called Permanent Memorandum 72. That memo made it clear if you were a lawyer working outside of the Office of General Counsel, or OGC, you were no longer authorized to give legal advice for LSU, but Katherine Muslow already knew this was coming. So on August 6, 2018, she received a message about the plan to move LSU HSC's legal functions under the Office of General Counsel. She told Meredith Cunningham about it the very next day. Then on December 19th, 2018, Thomas Skinner, LSU's Vice President of Legal Affairs and General Counsel, reached out to Muslow. He confirmed the consolidation and said her role would transition into the new OGC, or Office of General Counsel, with the same pay she was already making. Let me point something out. Katherine Muslow had been the General Counsel for LSU Health Sciences Center for 17 years. She was respected, trusted, and operated independently. Then came the so-called consolidation, which suddenly barred her from giving legal advice because her office was in the Health Sciences Center. Overnight, her once autonomous role was placed under Thomas Skinner, who had only joined LSU in 2015. But let's call this for what it was: a power shift packaged as consolidation. but in reality, it gave OGC control over Muslow. And this was after nearly 2 decades of independence. That memo essentially downgraded Muslow from an independent senior legal role to a subordinate one. And when that happens, it often turns petty. It can spiral into retaliation, which is exactly what seems to have been bubbling here while leadership just let it play out. A few weeks later, on January 18th, 2019, Muslow and Cunningham sat down with Skinner and Carlton Trey Jones III, who was the Deputy General Counsel. The Deputy General Counsel was second in command in the Office of General Counsel, right under Thomas Skinner. His role was to help manage the university's legal operations and oversee all attorneys working within the centralized legal structure. So during this meeting, you've got Thomas Skinner sitting there with Carlton Jones, his second in command, across the table from Katherine Muslow, with Meredith Cunningham, her second in command, like a real face off, almost like a quiet showdown. Now, during this meeting, we went over what the transfer would look like, and on January 18th, Office of General Counsel's business manager followed up and told them they would need to go through LSU's entire recruiting process just like any new hire. That meant filling out job applications, providing transcripts, and even signing new employment contracts. By January 22, contracts were sent out with the proposed start date of February 1st, 2019. Terms offered were the same roles they already held at LSU HSC, with the same salaries of $227,520 for Muslow and $76,500 for Cunningham, since she worked 60% of the time, or part-time. But here's where things took a turn. Muslow and Cunningham submitted the applications, but they didn't sign those contracts. Instead, on February 15th, Muslow emailed Skinner and copied Cunningham, asking that their salaries be reconsidered before they signed anything. She pointed to LSU HSC's 2017 unclassified employee market study, which showed that their positions were being underpaid. Based on that study, she requested an increase to $375,000 for herself and $204,748,000 for Cunningham. 3 days later, and this timing is important, LSU rescinded both offers. The reason given was that neither contract had been signed and the effective date had passed. Muslow pushed back. On March 1st, 2019, she emailed Skinner and LSU HSC Chancellor Larry Hollier asking about the status of their transfers. Skinner told Hollier that OGC was moving ahead with new hires, that Muslow and Cunningham's offers were rescinded, and that the positions would be advertised, meaning Muslow and Cunningham could reapply. What's important to point out here is that this is happening to tenured employees, women who had been loyal, long-standing contributors to LSU. And look, making people reapply for their positions during a consolidation isn't automatically unreasonable. If, and this is a big if, the entire process is reevaluated. That means looking not just at the paperwork and formalities, but also at whether their pay, their positions, and value to the organization are also being respected. But that didn't happen here. They were made to jump through hoops of the hiring process without any real consideration of whether their compensation matched their experience and contributions. The data already showed these women were underpaid compared to market rates, but instead of correcting that, LSU just offered them the same pay they'd already been making all along. Then on March 26, 2019, Muslow filed a complaint with the EEOC alleging discrimination based on gender and age. In her filing, she stated that she'd been historically underpaid compared to her male peers and that LSU rescinded her offer right after she requested the salary review. She later submitted a supplemental letter with Cunningham making it clear that the complaint applied to both of them. Neither woman applied for the reposted positions, and by the summer of 2019, both of their jobs at LSU HSC were officially gone. Cunningham's ended on June 30th and Muslow's on July 15th. Soon after, LSU hired Louis Coletta as chief counsel for a salary of $182,500. The staff attorney position that Cunningham had held was never filled. If you're dealing with retaliation right now, you know it's not always clear cut. It can be hard to prove, and sometimes you're not sure what it looks like. That's why I've put together the Employee Retaliation Response Workbook to give you some real practical guidance. It's at a special launch price right now, and I'll link it below so you can check it out if you think it could help. But for now, let's get back to the story. On July 22nd, 2019, Muslow and Cunningham filed their lawsuit in the Eastern District of Louisiana, alleging gender discrimination, equal pay violations, and retaliation under Title VII and the Equal Pay Act. LSU's response to the lawsuit was simple. This was about restructuring, not retaliation. They gave Muslow and Cunningham new contracts, but when those contracts weren't signed, the offers expired. The women say it's retaliation, but LSU said it's just business. And out of all the claims Muslow and Cunningham brought against LSU, which included discrimination, equal pay, and retaliation, only one survived, and it's the retaliation claim. That's the one that's headed for trial. Because the courts agreed that the timing of LSU's actions looked suspicious enough that a jury should decide whether this was in fact retaliation. So, where does this case stand today? Well, the Discrimination and Equal Pay Act claims didn't survive, but the retaliation claim, that's still very much alive. And it's moving forward. In August of 2023, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals revived that retaliation claim. And just this past April 2025, a federal judge denied LSU's attempt to dismiss it. Just that means Katherine Muslow and Meredith Cunningham's case is headed to trial unless LSU decides to settle first. And that's what makes this case so important. Retaliation often outlasts everything else. Even when discrimination claims are hard to prove, courts take a serious look at whether an employer punished someone simply for speaking up. So this case isn't over yet, and when there's a verdict or settlement, I'll be back with an update. In the meantime, subscribe to the channel, check out my other retaliation videos, and stay informed about your rights at work. So what do you think? Was LSU just restructuring, or was this retaliation in disguise? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next update. I'm Harlow Reed. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.